Wait, let me get one more sip of my tea so you don't see my unicorn mug, right?
I'm leaving this in.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Well, hello and welcome to the Below the Rim show, bringing you British basketball news, sometimes NBA. We've done a bit of that now. But yeah, this focus on this one is British basketball, and in particular the BBL and the not so recent now. We've been kind of sitting on this one for a bit. The cancellation of the BBL season and some aftermath that followed that I think we'll all have an opinion on. Let's introduce the fellas. Ads, my man, how's it going? Good lad. Daz, my man. Lost something? How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you? Glad to be back.
How about Josh? How's it going?
I'm going to elaborate on the way Daz introduced himself. Honey, was that correct? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was good.
Oh, nice. Confirmation as well. Brilliant. Right. Well, let's get some opinion from you guys first of all on news I thought was going to be fairly sort of cut and dry, if you like. The BBL cancellation for this season. Obviously, no more games going to be played due to the COVID-19, and we're going to look forward now to next season. I think there's been rumours of a couple of changes in terms of playoff structure next season. We maybe talk about that as well. But first of all, opinions on BBL cancellation. Ads, my man, take it away.
The season's been cancelled. I mean, what? When the announcement came through, I mean, I was just, it came up, I read it and just was like, it had to happen. It's obvious. There's no way that, I said it before, I don't think that there's a way of finishing the season because are you then going to have to bring back all your imported players from the States and Europe? Pretty sure none of the clubs would have the money to do that. So, what else could have happened?
No, absolutely. Daz, my man.
Yeah, I agree with Ads there. Really, since it all kicked off, in my head at least, I've just had it that the season ended there and then. We had the big send off in Glasgow, and that's all she wrote. It was always going to be pretty untenable to do anything. So it's unfortunate, but the right call was eventually made.
Josh.
Two reasons why it was the right decision. Number one, the BBL depends on game day revenue from tickets. Now, I think right now what you've got here in Europe, you've got 3 leagues that are coming back. That's Europe, obviously, along with the NBA, so 4 in total global. You've got the Israeli Winter League, you've got the Spanish ACB, and you've got the German Bundesliga, which started a few days ago. Now, these leagues can afford to run with no fans because they got TV sponsorships. They've got a lot of money that's been invested into the league that's equally distributed among teams. We don't have that in the BBL because we don't have the Sky Sports deal that we had back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's number one. Number two, even if we had those revenues, even if clubs could financially, I think there was something on Hoopfix saying that the government was going to bail out the BBL, the £1 million, whatever it was, to save them. Would you really, as a player, want to go back and play competitive basketball, seeing how COVID-19 is as bad as it is right now in the United Kingdom? What we have, I think,
Absolutely
is a death toll. I mean, it's not – right now, I go back to work. I literally, anytime I touch something, I've either got hand sanitizer or I'm washing my hands. So if you're a professional basketball player, why would you want to get back on the court when the virus is around this country pretty bad as it is?
Yeah. Well, you
Am I right in saying that bailout for the BBL got rejected, though? Did I read somewhere?
Yeah, government rejected it.
They've appealed it.
Have they appealed it?
Yeah, I think they were going to because they've got to. I mean, what else can they do? I mean,
well, like you've all alluded to, there's the BBL doesn't have the extra funding, the TV deal, the extra sponsorship deal that could potentially get them over the line, that could have kept players hanging around waiting for the season to restart. And I'm with you guys. I didn't think there was going to be any other announcement other than this year's a finished. We've done, and we're going to move on and rebuild for next season, and hopefully bring it back. The decision to not try to calculate a champion like some other divisions have done has maybe not received quite the response everybody thought it would, although the way Twitter and things were going, we probably could have predicted one or two. First of all, just on basis, do you guys agree that it's almost impossible to create some kind of champion out of this league? We'll go Daz first.
Completely impossible and completely unnecessary. Like, who honestly cares about who was the champion of near enough anything in the year 2020? When people remember this year, they're going to remember the global pandemic. They're going to remember, well, I mean, I know we want to talk about it a little bit more at a different time, but the Black Lives Matter movement, they're going to remember a lot more than who won or did not win a competition that wasn't near completion anyway. It had so much left to run. So it's unnecessary. It's complicated and, well, near impossible to do. Now, Pablo, you'll probably get into this, but we did the maths on it. You ran the numbers on it. You could have had, what was it, a 4 or 5 way tie had all the results gone how they could.
Yeah.
It needed a little bit of an upset or two, but it was more than possible. So, no, completely the right decision. You cannot award a winner in this situation. And also, we look at a couple of the other leagues, the National League. I know people aren't happy about how some of those leagues were handled, but they were far closer to their ultimate conclusion. So it's a little bit fairer. But you talk to players, you talk to other members of people, it still smacks because they don't feel like they got a fair shake of it.
Sure. Josh, my man.
Well, it's the right decision, no doubt, because ask the question, what do you win if you finish top of the BBL?
The 1 seed.
Yeah, the 1 seed, yeah.
The playoffs, right?
A
now,
trip to Plymouth.
The merit-based idea is that a team that's top of the British Basketball League is possibly going to get a spot in the Basketball Champions League qualifiers. Okay, that's great, but there's still major steps the BBL has to take for a team to be continually participating in that. We saw how that went for Leicester. Let's just be very realistic. Yes, it was the right choice to have no champion this year, but I'm going to jump right into it because we've talked about this before. The owner of the Glasgow Rocks, when he made that post at the beginning of the lockdown, and when I read that, I was a little bit disappointed and shocked when I read that because I felt like there's bigger things going on in the world right now, and that's what you're going to talk about. However, I like to see both sides of things. And in a league that we love so much, you know, Pabz, Ads, Daz, we love the BBL. We grew up in the BBL. I mean, it's the only league in my life that I'm really accustomed to where I was there for the majority of my life. So anybody that plays in the British Basketball League, coaches in the Basketball League, or runs a basketball team, I have so much respect. So when I've spoken to a lot of people that personally know the ownership at Glasgow Rocks and say to me, look, they've saved the club. They've invested a lot of money in the club. I was there when they played their first game in 1998 against the London Towers when they had Damien Page. John McCall wasn't there. But I love the Glasgow Rock fans. I love that club. So I can understand that the owners might think in their mind, well, we've invested a lot of money. This is what we want. We want that accolade. We want to be paid that homage. Okay, fine. But on the other side, it's like, just drop it. Next year's going to come back. We're going to go back to normality in a year, 2 years' time. We'll get back to it then. So it's a tough one because, like I said, when I first saw when there was no champion, I saw the comments from them. I was a little bit disappointed. But I can also see from their standpoint, well, we put a lot of work into this. So I'm 50-50 on it.
We'll come back to the Rocks in a sec. But Ads, first of all, Ads, your opinion on, do you think there could legitimately have been a winner?
No, not at all. I mean, I've just had to remind myself of the actual point standing. And Glasgow, they were only up by 4 points, was it? Yeah, 4 points, and they played an extra game to London. If you go down to D3 and look at Greg's situation with the Spinners, they won it. They'd already done it. It was in stone that they had won D3 North. And so that couldn't be taken away from them. So if that's the case, then fine. You know, if Glasgow were that many points ahead that that no one was going to catch him. Let him have it, but it's like Daz just said. Who cares? You know, why are we even bothered by it? The biggest priority for all the BBL clubs, and I don't think there's any exceptions here, is surviving and being there for next season. Because Daz, you said it the other week, and it's bob on. You get awarded the BBL championship this season. Who is ever going to remember that? And also, who's going to care, really? You know, it's neither here nor there.
It's definitely like an asterisk season, is it? I mean, even with the NBA coming back, that's not going to be a standard playoff system that we're used to. So there's always going to be flags on that, and that maybe they're coming back more from an entertainment perspective because you know there's a higher level of entertainment to that. There's obviously not going to be fans there. They've got the money to do it. Why not?
Interestingly, let me just, while I think of this, just Daz, you might have seen this because I know you follow a bit of British ice hockey. They're actually going to have a championship weekend. I forget when it is, but they're basically just they're taking it to, what's the big arena that they play out of for hockey? Is it Nottingham?
The Motor Point in Nottingham.
Yeah, so
the greatest arena in the country.
Yeah, they're going to just have the championship. There you go. They're just going to have a championship tournament in a weekend, probably behind closed doors, and done deal, similar to what the NBA are doing, I guess. But, you know, could that be done with the BBL? Maybe.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think it could be done with the... I'm going to pop this down. I don't think it could be done with the BBL. Again, and you've alluded to it earlier, it's getting the Americans back, or European or foreign-based players. And it's like Pablo and Josh have said, who wants to come to Britain right now? You've got a 14-day quarantine. We've got a very bad situation, probably the worst situation in the world with this coronavirus. And who's going to come and play one set of weekend games in British basketball? So I've been doing a lot of work with the London Basketball Nation, doing podcasts with them. And these are a bunch of guys based in London, and they're not even going to look at properly finishing out their season. So if you've got a bunch of guys in London who can't finish the season, how are you going to do the BBL?
Yeah, absolutely.
But good on the Elite Ice Hockey League. But then again, their season would have already been pretty much wrapped up by the time all this hit.
Yeah.
Well, we've already more than alluded to it, started to discuss it to a certain degree. Mr. David Lowe is the guy who openly took to Twitter. The Rocks initially released a statement that said, although they felt like they had a good claim, well, essentially it said they although they felt they had a good claim, they understood the BBL's decision and they would stand by it. Then subsequently, there's been he's been on the news, he's been in the press. I think he was in the sports section of the Mail on Sunday with a David Woods article. And of course, the Twitter response is referring to the BBL as donkeys and the board being useless and things like that, because the way he sees it, they didn't have the backbone to give the title to the Rocks. Now, I half lightheartedly, half sort of just to show the different outcomes, went through the fixtures, what was left, who had which points, and it could have been a four-way, maybe even a five-way tie at the top, but that's going to the extreme. At the very least, there's 4 teams at the top of that league that could finish with the same points. At the very least, there's 2 teams at the top of that league that could finish with the same points. Guys, it seems to me to be a bit ridiculous to not only, first of all, come up with the claim, and Josh is enjoying this, I can see, but secondly, to keep banging on about it, and especially when your own fans are saying, please stop. Josh, my man.
Sorry, can I just clarify something? So at first he goes public and he says, okay, well, we had a good claim and we'll accept it, blah, blah, blah. But then he goes to the press afterwards and then sort of backtracks what he says. Oh, it's like... Yeah. I mean, come on, man. If you're going to say one thing like, oh, no, like, you know, we accept this, and like, oh, they did, that's really naughty. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, just...
That's
that, isn't it? It's like, no, we did win. We win. We win. Didn't we? We win. We win. It's one of those things that, to me, when I was reading it, I was just so sort of like, really? That I didn't let it process enough to formulate an opinion other than, what are you on about? Why? Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's bigger issues in the world, obviously, but there's bigger issues in this league. I mean, I've just pulled up the Hoops Fix did a report on the financial side, and Sir Rodney Walker, the BBL chairman, stated, "I've gone back to government to remind them of the amount of work that sport generally does in urban communities, and it would be a shame that if we were curtailed because of lack of resource."
Absolutely.
To me, that's more of a statement to discuss than Glasgow. Do you see what I mean, though? It's like, Glasgow, just get over it. There's a slightly bigger issue here, as in the league might go under.
Yeah.
You know, what is it you want here? Yeah. We are the champions. Oh, the league's gone.
He's probably listening to that song right now at home with the Queen music in the back. You know?
Yeah.
That's my man.
Josh popped me a bit there. Look, as Josh has already said, they have put in a tremendous amount of work in Glasgow. They've built a really great club, great culture. It's a brilliant basketball team this season. Hasn't been the case that so much the last few years, but it's this year, brilliant team. I was really excited to commentate them in London again. Well, for the first time, actually. They're all so good. But so are a lot of other teams, and so are a lot of other owners. They've put in tremendous capital, tremendous effort, time, growing their teams. So, and I know I like Josh's caveat to start the point, but so is a lot of other teams. So it's time to give it up. It's time to leave it alone, because it's not doing the Glasgow Rocks any favours. Like, we all look at it, I mean, I don't know about ads, but we all look at things like pretty objectively, in terms of we see it for what it is, and okay, he wants it, that's great. But other people might look at this, like fans or new people to the sport, and they're going to see it, and that's going to rub them up the wrong way. And do you think that players that aren't going to be in this league, or are going to be in this league next year, aren't hearing what they're saying? Aren't thinking, you think you won this, let's run this back? A lot of players get super motivated by these things. All they're doing is putting a target on their back. Glasgow next year is going to be every single team's BBL Cup final or BBL playoff final. It's going to be the biggest game of their year. And they're going to get that every single night. And next year, if it all goes ahead, goes to plan, there are going to be a lot of games next year. And they're going to have daggers at them all season long. It's a bad tactic, just from that point of view alone, because it's got a lot of backs up. And it's, yeah, you're paying a target on your players' back. And is that what you want?
You know what this reminds me of?
It's like a good message.
Glasgow.
Put it to bed, mate. Yeah, go on.
You know what it reminds me of? You know when you see Donald Trump doing the press conferences?
How is Donald Trump coming to Below the Rim podcast?
Listen,
no, hear him out. Hear him out.
I should tell you. So, you know, he stands there and he's throwing out these statements, and the world is just sat there going. And behind, if you look carefully, you see his team of people that have to mop up his mess going. That's what this feels like. It's almost like he's saying that, but the players, the fans, and everyone else are just going. That is how Donald Trump comes into this podcast, Josh.
Good work, sir.
Okay.
I'm Donald Trump. I'm Wall.
Daz has alluded to it. I think I did a bit at the beginning as well. There's rumours to rule changes, and we're not talking about roster changes. We're talking about actually what's going to happen next season. They're talking about bringing back the 3 games, so you'll have a deciding game, 3 games league game. Everybody plays everybody 3 times. Then moving into the playoffs, I was really looking forward this season to the best of 3 series, and now that looks like it's going back to the aggregate stuff, which may be relevant to the whole European thing they're looking at going into, because I know some of those games are still aggregate.
Basketball Champions League is not aggregate anymore.
Oh, good.
It's not that then. But anyway, well, let's. Josh, you might as well, while we're on it, with the rule changes, how do you feel about it? So if there are going to be 12 teams, it'll be 33 games. Obviously, there needs to be a team added to that. Otherwise, it's the 30 games, isn't it? But home and away, and then an extra fixture beyond that. So there'll be more regular season games, and then the playoffs as well. What do you make of that, Josh?
All right, ads. When you were a teenager at the Manchester Evening News Arena and you were watching the great Mike Bernard, you were watching the great Yorick Williams, and it was the greatest thing ever. And playoffs were the best of three. Were they not, ads?
Yep.
All right, Pabz, when you were at Worthing Leisure Centre or whatever it was, and you were watching the great Steve Nelson, you were watching the great Colin Irish, same thing. When I was a 5 to 12-year-old at Thames Valley and London Towers, same thing. The biggest mistake the British Basketball League made was going to that ridiculous North and Southern Conference, and then when it got to playoffs, it was like a bracket, March Madness, one game, and you're knocked out. Now, something worse than that is aggregate. When I came back from the United States in 2011, I was watching the Worcester Wolves play a playoff game. It was a tie game at the end of game one. I thought, boom, go get a Pepsi, overtime. Oh, no. Game's over, tied. When in God's green earth is a basketball game over when the score is tied? Only aggregate. And that just makes it so, if it's a 20-point loss or whatever, the score tied, you want to see good games of basketball that are very close. If a team has got to win the second or third game by 17 points just to get back into it, it's almost more exhausting to watch than it is for the players to play it. So I would be so much more happy if it's best of three, because that's basketball. That is basketball. Aggregate is football.
The word aggregate and basketball should never be said in the same paragraph, sentence.
They're going to make golden basket pretty soon, aren't they?
Huh?
They're going to make, pretty soon, the BBL is going to make golden basket, and it's going to be away three-pointers count against you as well, like away goals in Champions.
You just cannot play the game of basketball to an aggregate. If anything, I mean, wasn't there a game at the start of the season where it was basically all over, and for the team travelling, it was just a big financial drain on their limited cash flow to play a game that was essentially pointless. It was probably actually a Giants game, because they were getting blown out by 50 points most games. And I think when they travelled up to, it might have been Glasgow or somewhere, and it literally was just a hole in their pocket. There's just no point. The guys have got to sit on a coach going all the way up there, 3-4 hour drive, thinking about, well, if we win this game by 75 points, it was worth it. It might have even been the game where Danny at the last minute had to call in. Who was it he called in? Because he literally had 5 guys.
Didn't they have Pilco? Did they have Pilco?
Yeah, Pilco played. But
they picked a young lad up on the way, didn't they?
Yeah, they picked someone
was
up.
Was it a young lad or was it an old lad?
It was a young lad.
I think it was a junior. Yeah.
But, for the Giants, that cost them X amount of money to basically drive up there to play a game that essentially meant nothing because of an aggregate. What is the point?
That's my man. Fixtures wise, how do you feel about this?
Aggregates rubbish. Get rid of aggregate. Bring back the 3 game. We were going to have 3 game this year. Another thing that COVID has ruined for us was the aggregate that we were going to enjoy. Sorry, not enjoy. Sorry, the 3 games that we were going to enjoy. So get rid of the aggregate. Bring in the 3 games. I still don't understand the rationale behind why they've got rid of that 3rd game. I genuinely don't understand what has changed in the situation from this year to last. Do you have to play an extra game? Maybe, but if you're that good, win the 2 games. Like, come on, sort it out. That said, though, 2 years ago at London Worcester, when that went to OT after the 2nd game, that was kind of cool. That was a fun moment. Was that 2 years ago? Oh, 3 years ago. Whenever it was pretty cool. But
the other thing with it as well is
hold on. Let Daz finish.
Sorry, Dad.
No. You go in, and I'm going to speak about Josh's point in a second, or about his face, more precisely.
Sorry, something just pops into my head. That's all. As things tend to do. What was it now? Yeah. Okay. So these games like that as well are a waste of time for the clubs financially, because the fans ultimately will look at it and go, "Well, there's literally no point in going to this game." There was a trophy game or a cup game at George Carno, and it was just virtually empty because there just was no point in coming down, spending 30 quid getting the family in to watch a game that essentially doesn't happen. Is
that Manchester Giants?
Yeah.
There's always a point to go watch Manchester Giants. Come on, that marketing team is the best.
I want to talk about Adam's face. No, wait. I want to talk about Josh's face.
My face? Good Lord, good Lord.
Your face. Because when Pablo was talking about going back to the 3 league games, you're like, yeah. Now, whereas me...
I might have been nodding at something else, actually, but yeah, go on.
Okay, fair enough. Regardless, you had a happy look on your face.
Something else. I can't explain what.
That's all right. I'm happy that you're happy. But I'm not happy. I'm going to tell you why I'm not happy. I love, as much as we all hate the aggregate's done, get rid of it, bin it off, get it in the bin. I do like a cheeky head-to-head, a direct head-to-head, where it's just you play each other home and away and it's settled. For me, that means fewer dead rubbers. Okay, and what Ads has been talking about all this time is teams traveling. If you've had a really terrible season, do you want to be making that huge 3rd trip on an already exhausting and demoralizing season? Is that what you want? I mean, maybe. I mean, these guys are competitive. So they're still going to go at it hard. Don't get me wrong, but if it's costing money, if it's going to hurt players morally, maybe physically, you want to bust your ass up a 5-6 hour journey, get trounced for what, So I really like the head-to-heads. I'm glad that the cup seems to be retaining its similar format. So we have a lot of cup games. So there's still going to be loads of home games, loads of opportunities. I just don't love the third game. I like a good clean head-to-head. Again, if it's good enough for EuroLeague, the best league on the planet, then it should be good enough for the British Basketball League. That's what I'm saying.
I hear I was quite intrigued by the 3 games, just simply from the point that there's going to be more basketball. And I like to watch basketball. Yeah. So from that respect, maybe go for 4. Was that too many?
Yeah, okay.
Too many. But going back to what you said about the cup, the BBL Summer League Cup, as I'm starting to think it more like. So I gather that's going to be the same. We're going to have the cup group matches at the beginning of the season before we actually get into the league, which last season, I mean, didn't cause controversy, but it caused a bit of kind of eye-opening towards teams' attitudes to it. They didn't maybe have everything cemented in place. They didn't have all their signings in at the start of that part of the season. And as we saw, literally a completely different Glasgow Rocks team from the Cup, who were fairly awful, let's be honest, to when the league started, they were on it straight away and up there with a shout, not the only shout, as we've already said, but that kind of thing. Does that lessen the Cup to a degree? Because obviously that those early stages weren't necessarily the best of the teams. You weren't seeing the best of the teams in the BBL. What do we think of that, Ads?
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that one thing that is a big shame about the way the season's come to an end, some pretty memorable stuff did actually happen this season. And this season should be remembered for maybe 4 teams. Newcastle, Worthing, Solent, and Worcester. Great things happened for those teams, and it's quite sad that what they achieved won't be remembered this year. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Because good stuff did come out of the trophy and the cup. I mean, that final up in Glasgow was a great game. Loved it. But will it be remembered? Probably not, unfortunately. Had the season finished and it was a normal season, no COVID, nothing like that, it's one of those games you look back at. Do you remember the Newcastle final in Glasgow? That was a great game. You know, it's sad for those teams. And as a spectacle and as an event, me and Daz were there. That was a great day in Birmingham, wasn't it?
Yeah, fantastic.
Just a great day. The atmosphere was everything you know. I walked in and looked around, and it was just like, it can be done. We can do this. This game has the potential to do what we all want it to do again. We're in a big arena. You got the big. Admittedly, it didn't work the whole day. The big screen behind the court. You know, you had some great games. The women's final was great. The men's final was great. You know, it was just all there. It's all there for the taking. And it's just sad that the great things that happened this year didn't happen. Aren't going to be remembered.
That's my man.
Yeah, I just want to dive in with your comment on the cup. And whilst we did see some teams really reverse their fortunes in the north, in the south, I thought the group stage in the south was absolutely amazing, and it did tell the tale of how things were looking to shape out in the regular season. With let's take the London Lions. They were suspect on the road, but fantastic at home. That game, that night, 199 win over the Royals, that's one of the best games I've been at in my entire time following the sport of basketball, you know? So some really great things did come out of the cup, but it is a disappointment that some teams maybe didn't take it seriously or didn't look to bring in their pieces ready-made. But I mean, is that the truth though? Like, do teams really go into the start of a competition not wanting to go at it properly and win? Was it just a good opportunity to see, well, this isn't working, big rehaul or overhaul rather of rosters? So I don't know if it's a case of, well, we don't care about the cup, let's just go with this, or we're starting the cup, this isn't working, we need to reverse ferret and crack on with something different. So
no, I think you're right. I think it's probably more circumstantial than anything else. I know that when players come in, usually there's a probation period, and it's at the beginning of the season, and that's when the cup is played. So that's when we're likely to see most of the changes, which maybe gives a fairer kind of result when the league actually starts, because by the time the league starts, teams have pretty much, besides one or two, pretty much got their team cemented in. It's just maybe the cup suffers from that. Josh, your opinions on it?
This was my first year being involved with the British Basketball League, and probably the last year I'd ever even been like an actual fan of the BBL was the 2004-2005 season. That's almost, 15 years ago? And when I found out, when I was at Crystal Palace, that the first competition was the Cup, I felt, well, this is like the PBA in the Philippines, because the Philippines, they have 3 different cups. They've got the Governor's Cup, the Philippine Cup, and then something else. But essentially what they are is, they're just 3 different leagues played across 12 months. And what's interesting about those 3 different leagues, there's certain rules on each cup, what kind of import American you're allowed. One import has to be in one of those cups no taller than 6'5". The other one in the next cup, it can be 6'10". The third one, it can be 7 foot. So when I saw that the BBL Cup was the first line of games, I felt like, are they copying the PBA? But it makes sense what you just said there, Pabz, the probation. Maybe it's just a good chance for teams to get sort of time to sort of prepare themselves for the league, maybe get into it. I don't know. I don't personally agree with it, because I like the old format. Start with the league. The cup plays in tandem with the first league games, and then you've got the trophy games in the last stages of the year.
I mean, we've talked about this before. The format of the season was just really weird with doing the cup and the trophy and then starting the league. It was so odd. But again, I reiterate a point that we've made several times. Why don't we just have one FA Cup type tournament, which is open to National League from D3 all the way through to BBL, and allowed teams like, say a Lancashire Spinners, who were absolutely outstanding this year, they get a chance to play teams in much higher conferences and potentially have a good run, get some exposure. It's exposure for the players. Why don't we just do that? I really don't know why they haven't explored this as an option, because it's a completely viable option. Look at what Worthing and Solent did last season. There's teams in D2 and D3 like the Spinners who could, really make a name for themselves and cause some upsets. I mean, it was great seeing a National League team in that final, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Daz, you were rubbing your hands together then.
I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea. I've been on board with this idea for a couple of years. Speaking to players about it, BBL level players, they're not necessarily against it. The only concern they have is quality of courts, which I think is a valid concern. But if you're playing National League, you should have a sufficiently good court. But maybe we can. Hey, I'm going to borrow from Josh a minute here. Argentina, the Copa Argentina. It's the Argentine FA Cup, where all the games are, in an attempt to federalize the sport of football in Argentina, are held at neutral grounds. So Racing Club could play River Plate, and they'll play it in Tucumán, for example, which is nowhere near where either of those play. Pardon?
Football or basketball?
Football. I know you don't care about football.
No, yeah, I didn't know it was playing neutral grounds. So that's something I've learned new now.
But yeah, if you have to have a certain caliber of court, maybe a D1 court, maybe then every team has to travel a little bit for one of their games to a local area. But I think, I love the idea. I think there's a lot of potential there. It just needs a bit of working out. And the big thing is it needs people to get around the table, talk and compromise.
Yeah. I mean, you say that, but I remember in the early 90s, I remember going to watch my local conference team, Altrincham, who had a bit of a cup run. They ended up playing Spurs. And I'm pretty sure that Spurs had to come to, the little 2,000, 3,000 stadium down in Altrincham, a conference team. It was kind of a huge deal for the lower league teams that had a good cup run to get a Premier League team, or at the time Division 1 team, going to a tiny ground. It was great for the club. I know it's a bit different with basketball because of the type of facility that you need. But I've seen the Giants playing at the formerly named Amici Centre against the Magic a few times, and it's great because it gives fans are in a smaller gym.
Yep.
I completely agree with you. However, you look at the example of, was it Farnham or Farnborough? I forget exactly, who had to go and play at Arsenal because their ground just was not suitable. And there are a couple of. Sorry, mate.
That's literally 2 miles down the road from me, Farnborough.
Beautiful. So you've got, and there are going to be facilities in D3 that are not suitable for the standard of game, and also the amount of crowd that you're going to try and draw for it. So again, I'm thinking about the Stephen Pearce. The Stephen Pearce, you're not going to be able to get a BBL team and have a bunch of travelling support in there. The bunker, as much as I love it, it's not happening. So you'd have to move that. Now, maybe you could move it to Kelsey Kerridge, but then that's a floor that isn't of the same standard. So do you know what I mean? These are quite specific examples, but it's got merit. It's got legs.
I don't know the venues in the south like Daz and Josh will, but certainly if it was to be done in a regional, in the early stages, it was more regionalised. Certainly in the north, you've got facilities like Bellevue that could host those games, almost like a neutral ground. And I'm sure that up north you could do it at Newcastle or Glasgow. Down south, I know it'd be a bit weird for Copper Box because it's a different arrangement that they have with basketball. But what would be a good arena to do that down south?
Well, let's take the Copper Box, which is an expensive arena, but it's a great arena. And why not have 4 games or 3 games happen that day? You get 6 teams there. pack out the place with fans of all these different teams, a bit like the EIHL final days, a bit like FIBA competition that we see and enjoy so much. Why not make a real event, real day of it, a celebration of basketball? If it's regional, if it's wholly national, and you just get drawn to go to a place, whatever. But again, it's just about people are going to have to sit around, think about these ideas, and because I think it's what people want. People love the FA Cup for this. They love the Coupe de France for this. For the story, the Solent, the weird thing. But even, our man Greg and the Lancashire Spinners getting all the way there, and the Titans. Are you trying to tell me that you don't want to see Northampton Titans play against somebody from D1 or above?
Totally.
Josh Moran. Josh was keen to come in.
I've got a question for everyone, and I want you to go around because I've argued this with, I wouldn't say argue this, I debated this with Dan Routledge on Twitter back in like October. Just the one thing I wish the BBL wasn't was the one single franchise. I would love to see promotion relegation go into the BBL. What do you all think of that?
Ads?
I'm with it because if you to make the BBL the desirable ultimate goal for British basketball teams to get to, brilliant. My only downside to it is the fact that really what's in it for them, because we all know that the problem with going up into the BBL, or going to the BBL I should say, is the fact that you got to have a lot of money sat there to make sure that you're going to make it. I mean, the London City Royals thing was obviously an awful thing to happen, and I know that it's why teams like Solent and Worthing really edge on the side of caution. We talked to James from Teesside about it. It's more it's not a cool thing that teams almost are afraid to make that jump because it's going to cost them a lot of money to do it. That's why I just don't see how it could be done, because they're not going to turn around and say, yeah, all right, let's do that so that if you're in National League D1, you can be promoted to the BBL. Everyone will be like that. I don't want to win because it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds to
that would probably have to change, wouldn't it? Daz, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, like you've just said, perhaps things would have to change. We'd have to have the C word, the compromise word. What I would say to Josh, though, to compromise with that idea, is it could work with a BBL 1 and BBL 2 with no relegation from BBL 2. So if you want to be in the party, in the show, then sure, because that would be cool. A little bit of relegation promotion from these two like elite leagues, but we need so much. We are so far from that point, I think, in my opinion. We need stability. We need at least 20 teams that are worthy, or at least halfway there, for being an established, sustainable BBL franchise. And then we can talk about promotion relegation. Because like you've said, Ads, it's so much money. It's prohibitive to a lot of teams going there. We've seen teams come in. How many teams have come in, fallen by the wayside within a year, 2, 3, 4 years in recent times? I can think of 4 teams off the top of my head that have come to the BBL and it's just not worked out. So in theory, it's a cool idea. It works across Europe as well. But we need sustainability. I think I like the idea of BBL 1 and BBL 2, and then you've got the National League structure beneath or to the side of that, shall we say. Oh, and we need a Welsh franchise, at least 1, ideally 2. Let's represent North Wales. I'm tired of this Cardiff bias, this Southern media bias. Wrexham could do with a team. Colwyn Bay, it's a nice place.
I'll come in and say I don't like it. I don't want there to be relegation and promotion, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Why not?
I'm a traditionalist in a sense that basketball, from the way it always was, there was a bigger gap between the BBL and the NBL Division 1. There was a bigger gap. It's just how it was. It was, the BBL was obviously a professional league. The players coming into it were of a very high caliber. We're getting those players coming in now, the likes of Kyron Cartwright coming in and playing the ball he did, Parker Jackson Cartwright, CJ Gettys even. Exactly. There, I've always felt that it should be more like the NBA. I don't think we should have cup or trophy competition, and I don't think we should make so much fuss about winning the league per se, because ultimately your position in the league determines your progression in the playoffs, because the playoffs is what it's all about. That's the ultimate goal at the end of the season. London Lions had a fantastic season, won the league, were streets ahead of everybody else, didn't get that playoff win, and for me that kind of belittled their season a little bit, if you see what I mean. And it put the Leicester Riders back on top, and it was a three-peat for them as well, which I don't think enough of a deal was made of, because there's not that many teams that have three-peated in the BBL in terms of the playoffs. But it's always been, it's a professional entity that you buy into. You buy a franchise, you run that franchise. There's no fear of you dropping out of that league, but there is a fear if you don't perform particularly well financially, you won't be viable. So you want to do the best you can, as well as you can, for as long as you can. It ebbs and flows. Obviously, we've had Manchester Giants, the former version of it, at the top of that division. Now they're kind of at the bottom. We've had Leeds come and go. London City Royals were, although unsustainable, were at the top end of the BBL, couldn't quite hold on to it. And they went through that sense, not a sense of going out of the division into a lower division. It's just, for me, it's just always been separate. BBL has been the top dog, and the NBL and everything else has been very good, very competitive. There's been great players coming out of it. I want it to get back to that point where the best players in the NBL are actually trying to get into the BBL with a franchise, be it drag their own team into it and make them want to go for it. Somebody like someone like Cameron Hildreth, playing the way he plays, how good would he be in the BBL? He'd be awesome in the BBL, but there doesn't seem to be the attraction to it that there once was, because the NBL standard is at the top end, and we've seen with Solent getting to the final and Worthing doing as well as they did. There's not that huge gap anymore. Not huge, but bigger gap. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to disrespect any league by saying that there was a difference in standard, but I mean, you guys will vouch for the fact that back in the, not even that far back in the day, there was a bigger gap between the top of the National Basketball League and the BBL, and it's simply financial. Obviously, you can afford better players in the BBL, but for me, I keep it separate. But that's just me.
So why does it work in Spain? The best domestic league in Europe, I think that's fair to say. I'm looking at Josh.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say to that is that a lot of it is mainly football-based clubs that are at the top of that. So maybe that system is more transferable. You've got your Real Madrid, your Barcelonas. They also play in a football division where you can get relegated and promoted, and that maybe works better as a crossover than maybe it would here. I don't know. Maybe it would work here because obviously everybody follows a football team as well, and that's the system in football, always has been. Although they did at one stage try and make the Premiership a separate entity, a franchise entity, but it obviously didn't work. The fell apart at the beginning stages of that. But maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Other opinions, go.
Well, I mean, who was it? Was it Josh that said that you didn't like, or was it you, Pabz, that you didn't like the North and South thing?
I liked it.
To be honest, I think that is more of a draw to me as a good change. More attractive to say I've won the Northern Conference or I've won the Southern Conference, and the ultimate goal is to win the BBL title. Whereas at the moment, you win the league, and it's like what are players more? But it'd be interesting to do a survey of what players want to win more, the league or the playoffs. And I think that by not having anything to differentiate before that, like a North and South Conference thing, it just kind of dilutes it a bit. But I mean, the big priority for me is getting more teams back in the league again, so that you can then split the country in half and have a Northern Conference in the Southern Conference, and we can look forward to the big clash at the end of it.
I got two things. Firstly, speaking to Rob Paternostro, the best coach of the last decade, he really values winning the league because you've had to be the best team all season long. And that's what he told me. I said, what matters more, playoffs or league? And he says, league, because, again, you have to be the best throughout. I don't know what your dad thinks about that, Josh. Get to that in a second. Secondly, just on like a really boring geography pedantic point, why do we talk about north-south? I mean, I kind of get it with the way the teams are, but east-west, I mean, if we expand like we want to, east-west is definitely the way to go because it's so much harder to travel cross-country than it is north and south. That's just a whole pedantic little geography element, but let's not break down north and south. Let's go east and west, have those two conferences. Again, I don't know how practical that would work based on where teams are now, but as we grow, as we expand, east-west, let's do it.
I mean, obviously, the biggest pain in the ass for anyone is having to get to bloody Plymouth.
Yeah, but if you keep them over, I mean, they're the outlier that proves the rule, unfortunately.
Keep it north-south. It's easy. It's a long old way to go. If Glasgow and Plymouth are on the on the same coast, he's thinking about it down there. I can see. I'm not sure if they are or not, but if they are, that is one hell of a travel.
No,
for your own conference match.
How could they possibly be in the same conference?
Well, if you're splitting the country down the middle and Glasgow happens to be on the left side, do you know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's north and south because the UK is very long, north to south. So
you're having geography issues then, Pabz.
I understand that, but it's really difficult to travel. It's so easy to travel north to south unless you're Plymouth than it is travel east to west. It's easier to get from Sunderland to Manchester. It's as hard to get to Sunderland to Manchester. It's hard to get from Sunderland to Manchester as Sunderland to London.
What about Newcastle to Plymouth?
That makes no sense. Hey?
What about top to bottom?
But Newcastle and Plymouth would be on different sides of the country. This is very simple.
You get my point, though. It's like, even if there is, like, if you're going to, which side London going? Left or right? West, east or west? Because that's a hell of a journey up north from London.
No, but it's easy to travel from London. All the travel links. This whole country is based. Sorry to be the Welsh guy here, but this whole country is based about get to London. It's the easiest thing in the world.
It's not cheap.
I live in Cambridge. I live in Cambridge, but it's not cheap to get from Sunderland to Manchester, and you go sideways.
But if you're going north and south, it's cheaper to go Sunderland to Newcastle backwards and forwards 5 times, isn't it? Than London to Sunderland.
They're on the same side of the country, Pablo.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point completely.
How am I missing your point? How
you split it north-south? You don't split it east-west. The two extremes are too.
But we're worrying about Adam and his money and his travel.
If we go east and west, I think Glasgow are going to have to take a boat down to Plymouth. That might be the easiest way because you think about
sail around the side of the country.
That's fine.
I'm interested in what Dad said before about Josh. Your dad's perception on what's more important, the league or the playoffs. It's getting really dark for some of us. It's the sun's going down. I can't see myself. But carry on.
Give me a second. Hold up.
Are you just messaging your old man?
No, I'm going to call him.
Oh, nice.
He might be in a bit of a bad mood, guys, but we'll find out. Look what his name is.
What's the time difference? Old man.
Bernard Jackson, that's his nickname.
Oh, dear.
They're not going to pick it up. I've got to do a message. Look, to answer that question, it's no, because look, when I mentioned the whole relegation promotion scheme, I know there's like an upfront fee to join the BBL, and I think that's what you alluded to, Ad, that the financial costs are quite bad. But yeah, there would have to be a whole restructuring of the league, and that would take a very, very long time. Sorry, it's getting a bit more, it's getting a bit shady. So, but the thing is, going on to the whole, what you said, Pabz, and you've kind of sort of enlightened me a little bit about the whole franchise process. I like it. And maybe the way you've just said it, to make it more elite, the North and South would work. Okay, fine. But here's the thing. That's a question I have wondered, Daz, for a very long time. What is more important, winning the league or winning the playoffs? Because, to be honest, one thing the Tigers were good at were good at being in the league. They were good at winning the league. One thing they were terrible at was, one, getting to Wembley, and then two, getting to Wembley and losing to the same team called the Worthing Bears. So, as a Arsenal fan,
sorry, carry on.
That's why we've got to get Niall Gray on this, because you two are just going to bite each other's heads off. So, basically, when I look at the NBA, you're right. I think when teams say, "Oh, we're the number one team in the East or number one team in the West," that doesn't mean a thing unless you got the ring. But in the BBL, I think, in my mind, judging by what I've noticed over the years, it does seem to me like winning the league is more important than the playoffs. However, Pabz, I'm with you personally. I see the playoffs as a bigger thing than winning the league.
I agree. It's that whole thing, isn't it? At the end of the season, that's what you're striving for. You're striving to get to the O2 and get beaten by the Leicester Riders. That's what you're striving for.
I mean, by the way, as well, Josh, it's not even. Hi, Pabz. Wow.
Jeez, that's right.
Isn't it? It looks
like a ghost story. Sorry, carry on. You can't see me at all now. I've turned it off.
It's like that bit on the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. Let's not.
I see dead people.
Oh, hello.
Whoa.
Oh, this went off a cliff, bloody hell.
Oh, we should wrap things up.
I have a point to make.
Go on, make your point. Make your point, and we'll wrap it up.
What Josh said there about the money side of it, it isn't just the first season that you got to pay the franchise fee. That's the first, is it 3 or 4 seasons that you've got to pay it for?
How much is it? 250 grand?
25 grand a year.
Oh, 25 grand a year. Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
No. Is it 20? No, it's 250, isn't it?
A year?
250?
No, it's 25 grand a year.
It's definitely 25.
Yeah, definitely 25. And that's for 4 years because it's 100 grand buy-in, I think.
Okay.
Oh, makes sense.
Okay.
Cheers. It's gone. Oh, it's come back. There we go. Was that your point, mate?
That's my point.
I've got a follow-up point to my ridiculous east-west assertion, okay? Right? Sunderland to London by train, because we're thinking about the fans. We're thinking about ads.
4 hours.
It's 239 miles, and it's 3 hours, 26 minutes. Sunderland to Manchester, 104 miles, 4 hours, 11 minutes.
Yeah, but you've got to go to different. You've got to change over places, haven't you?
Drive.
There's no
That's
direct.
how far Glasgow to Plymouth.
Because they're both on the west coast.
Let's have a look.
How is Glasgow on the west coast?
Well, if you're going to split it down the middle, Glasgow's on the west side of the UK, isn't it?
That's got to be 600 miles?
It's like Chicago. Chicago's in the east coast, but it's Midwest.
Yeah, well, put it in the other conference.
Make an exception. Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Make an exception. Just have a squiggly line. Like the north-south divide in this country. You think that's a straight... Sorry, it's a geography one. But you think that's a straight line? Right? That's the UK. It's like this.
Looks like the Pure Gym logo.
That's a sponsorship we need to get, boys.
Right, fellas, we'll wrap things up. Ads, anything in closing?
Yeah, you're bonkers, Pabz.
Josh, my man.
Yeah, look, I want to make the point. If you make an announcement public or you say something on the lines of, look, we accept so-and-so, but then you go back to, like me going on Twitter and saying, look, I totally agree that Pablo says that the Bears are better than Tigers, but then I'm going to go to Facebook later on and be like, it's like, that's how I want to end it. You can't just use different media platforms to address a different message. You got to be the same on all of them. That's all.
And Daz, my man, bring us home.
Ishmael Fontaine needs to be on Question Time, and it's been a joy to be back with you boys.
Good man. Well, we'll be back very soon to tackle some more up-to-date matters, shall we say, because obviously all this stuff's been festering for a little while now. Before Josh completely vanishes to the dark side by the looks of it, thanks very much for watching and listening. We'll be back. Take it easy. We'll speak to you soon.